This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, we're sending out a PR podcast plug this week to Jerry Barmash, the editor for Patch in Nassau County on Long Island. Now, Jerry's been a guest on the show. I work with him a lot. I pitch him stories, and he's a friend. But he's just published his first book, Here Now the News, an inside scoop into New York's best-loved anchors. Now, if you love the behind-the-scenes antics, and I used to work in a newsroom, there are antics that go on. Let me tell you, there are antics. But if you're a fan of that and all the newsroom hijinks, check out this book by Jerry Barmash. It's available for purchase starting on June 10th of 2024. It's on Amazon. It's lots of other places. You can look up Jerry online. You can go back in the shows and find Jerry's show. I think it's sort of, I'm not exactly sure what episode it is, but it's sort of in the middle of our current episodes right now. But also just Google him. You'll come at Jerry Barmash, B-A-R-M-A-S-H, Jerry with a J. Look him up, buy that book. It's a lot of fun, and we wish him a lot of luck. And congratulations, we're giving him a PR podcast plug this week. Now on with our show today. Let's intro our terrific guest. Amanda Arrigotti-White is founder and CEO of Curate Co, serving clients in the food and beverage space. Now, after getting her start in PR at SOREL and Columbia Sportswear, she fell hard and fast for the hospitality industry while she was in-house at Ste.Michelle Wine Estates. As the driving force behind Curate Co's growth and strategy, she remains hands-on with every client. That is a feat. Snagging hits in Self, Today, Vanity Fair, and Vogue. Amanda, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me and for that great intro.
Oh, you're very welcome. Tell us about this love affair you have with food and bev and hospitality. How'd you get into it? How'd you get bit by the bug?
Yeah, it really happened when I started at Ste.Michelle Wine Estates. So as a lot of people may or may not know, Ste.Michelle Wine Estates owns quite a few brands. So it was almost like working within an agency where you were working up from one brand to another. One might be in the luxury tier, another might be more consumer facing, something you'd buy in the grocery aisle. And I just fell in love with the fact that for wine, the winemakers were part scientists, they were part farmers, they were part artists. It was this really interesting melding of these different categories that I never really knew existed, and it opened my eyes to then working with chefs and restaurants and then food producers. And so it opened the doors and really got me to start Curate Co.
It is a really interesting industry. I was telling you before the show, I have one restaurant client. I've worked with a couple over the years. I am by no means the expert that you are. It is also, I'll say, and I'm saying this politely, it's a volatile industry in that brands and restaurants and all can come and go very, very quickly. How do you keep up? And I'm sure the trends fluctuate as well. How do you keep up with everything? And how do you get dug in with a particular client, whether that's a wine label or a restaurant or how do you dig in and get them started and get them ramped up real quick?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, when we first start with a new client, we are storytellers. No matter what service or scope we are working with them on, we start with the story. And a lot of that is human driven. It's that human connection. Who are the people behind the brand? What is the core story? And I think, the trend side of it is actually sometimes a really exciting piece of it. It's once we get that core story down, how did their core story, their restaurant, their product, their location or property, how does that lend itself to what's happening culturally and having these cultural moments? So I think fusing both the core of what we do and what the core authentic story is to the brand and overlaying it in what are people talking about? What are media talking about? What are they going to be interested in? And how can we overlay and introduce the brand in a new, fresh way? That's what excites me a lot of the time.
It is probably really challenging to be that storyteller because, and again, I'm painting with a broad brush and I'm going to make some inferences, but I would imagine that a restaurant is either we want to be the height of luxury or we want to be family friendly or, there are boxes, right? Just like anything else. How do you get a restaurant client, as an example, to be the thing they want to be, but kind of step outside of that box to differentiate themselves and to really play up their uniqueness?
For us, it's a lot about segmentation. It's owning what they are. So let's say they are that family-friendly space and they want to be known, or they want to reposition a bit more in the luxury or high-end date night spot, or the celebratory spot. I think for us, it's one, being realistic, but also understanding, what are you known for now, and what are those stories that we can do to maintain some of those key customers, and then what are the stories that help lend itself to wherever you're trying to grow or where you want to go, and let's try to pitch those out and align the publications, the editors, and the story to figure out how can we pitch that, but also not alienate the existing customer, right? So like if a customer, if a brand that we're working with says we want to be a bit more elite, we want to be positioned in this kind of cool girl space, and they're really more of like, the hangout, you can grab them at Target, they're really approachable, but that's their core audience. You don't want to lose that, right? I think for us, it's figuring out those slow incremental opportunities where we can pitch them and land stories or create partnerships with influencers that help to slowly move them into the space they want. And that tends to allow for the existing customer base to grow with the brand and not leave them behind.
Yes, so much of this work is rooted in geography, right? Unless you are a restaurant at a tourist destination, and I could think of somewhere that, maybe even like a New York, right? You're largely marketing to the local geographic audience because, 6 days out of 7, those are the people who are coming into the restaurant, right? How do you bridge the gap? I mean, how do you identify the publications that are in the local geography while not discounting anyone who might come in, like I said, as a tourist destination, maybe into a major metro area or something like that?
Yeah, I think influencers play a really key part in that. I think for top of funnel awareness, it's really helpful to have that lever to pull to be able to have these influencers that have a strong local following, that people follow them, they trust them, and they're looking to them for restaurant recommendations. I think especially in market, if you're an existing restaurant, you're not launching, where media can help is driving people that are visitors when they are Googling, they don't necessarily follow local influencers. So they're Googling and looking at the local eater story, the local Epicurious story, the local magazine story, and figuring out some spots they want to check out while they're in town. So it's a balancing act of making sure that when the larger publications that are, regional or locally known, when they are doing those top restaurants for insert family dinner or for brunch, that you're a part of that consideration set. But also turning on the lever of influencers for, new menu items, which a lot of time media don't necessarily want to cover. They're not interested in that, but influencers are. They'd love to come in and show, up close and personal views of the new cocktail or the new brunch item. And so that's one way in which we've accomplished that and overcome that type of challenge.
Yeah, you opened it up with influencers, right? And they might even be more important than food critics at this point, because a critic, they're the new critic, right? Yeah, and you can have one critic from the main local paper or whatever the case may be, and they'll review you once in maybe 5 years. But you've got this endless stream of influencers or creators or whatever you're going to call them these days. And you can just have a parade of these folks coming into your place, right? How much stock do you put in connecting with the right influencers for the establishment?
It takes a lot of time and effort, and we spend a lot of hours to find the right influencers, because I think because influencers' role has become pretty influential, especially for restaurants, but also for brands and CPG and wine and beverage. finding the right influencers who allow the brand to reach the right audience, but also aesthetically. Like a lot of the time, one of the secondary goals of partnering with an influencer is that they're creating content for the brand. And so, whether it be, a trade with the influencers of, hey, we'll host you to come into the restaurant, or, hey, we're going to send you product. Plus, sometimes there's monetary compensation and long contracts that we're working with. Whatever that background and scope is, a lot of the time, those influencers are creating content that then the brand can repurpose. So we need to make sure that that influencer's audience fits the client's audience, and also that their aesthetic fits the aesthetic of the client, so that they do have that added value of being able to repost the content, have it look good in the feed, or have it look good on their website, depending on how they're co-promoting it.
What's your experience with, you mentioned monetary compensation for influencers. I know that everybody's got their own version of what they do, right? And some want to get paid plus the experience. Some are just happy to have the experience and maybe bring a few friends, whatever. It's one-off. I mean, are these one-off relationships and sort of one-off, I don't want to say contractual, but you get what I mean. Like, is each deal unique?
Definitely. For us, it is. That's how we typically approach it. And I think it depends on the influencer and it depends on the product. Most influencers, as they increase their following, are going to ask for compensation. This is, both a hobby and a passion, but also it's a business for them. A lot of influencers, as they get over the 25, 30, 45,000 followers, we're seeing them even get agents. And so there's even an in-between where it's crossing between content creator and celebrity, where we now have agents and entire influencer agencies that are representing influencers that we have to work with. And a lot of time it's great. We get to collaborate. We have other people that are, working towards a specific goal, but influencers are pricey. And I think that's something that, unless you're a restaurant, restaurants, I think, are the one exception to this, because they can have this really unique experience and it's a localized experience. With brands, it's a pay for play. You have to align with the influencer and make sure they're interested in the product, but you also have to have the budget to justify an influencer campaign.
Yeah, let's talk about how someone getting started. Let's say someone is opening a restaurant and maybe they don't have the budget to hire a you or a me, but they want to start getting out there. Is it as simple as sort of, going through Instagram and offering influencers to come in and experience the cuisine? Is it easy? Is it easy as that to get started?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's sometimes as simple as a DM and a conversation, and then making sure that when somebody does come in, that you're inviting, when you're asking, I mean, it's still a transaction. You're saying, hey, come in. I'd love for you then to cover the restaurant or share your favorite cocktail or your favorite dish. I think it's also making sure that the expectations are there of, hey, I'd love to host you, but I'd love for you to post at least once, or I'd love for you to post in stories while you're there and following within the week. Having some parameters, because it still is, you're investing your time and energy as a restaurant owner or a GM. You're also investing money into hosting them and giving them this great experience. There needs to be a concrete result that you can see after it.
That is a great point. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make, especially when they're starting to work with influencers, whether they're a novice PR person or an eager restaurant owner. You have to define the transaction, because it is a transaction, right? I'm going to give you this in exchange for you giving me that. It can be as blunt as that, right?
Absolutely. And I think too, it helps. I mean, influencers are oftentimes creatives. They're content creators. So just like how you would pitch a journalist, there still needs to be storytelling too. And you need to help fuel the storytelling of, hey, these are 3 things that I think are really cool that would resonate with your audience. I'd love for you to come in. I'd love for you to do this. And here's some of the asks in giving you this really great experience for you and a friend, or you and a couple friends. Like, we'd love to have a bunch of people over, or host a party for you. Like, those types of things, you can still help tell that story or plant the seed for the story for the influencer, just as you would for media.
Yeah, I know you had a couple of things that you do to make a brand stand out, whether it's with an influencer or whether it's with a food critic, or even just, pitching a story about a restaurant or a food and bev client. What are some of the ways that you help find what's inside the brand and how to make that brand stand out? We talked before about, the differentiation, but are there things that you go back to maybe over and over again, sort of like game plans that you go back to say, here's how we're going to do this?
For us, we spend a lot of time getting to know our clients, whether it be in person or Zooms, calls, like really getting to know them and getting to know the brand, doing taste tests if it's, a CPG or a beverage brand, visiting the restaurant, talking to the servers, talking to the bartender, like understanding all of the unique facets of the business. Because like I said earlier, at the end of the day, we're storytellers and we're coming in, we're new. Maybe we've, tasted something or been to the restaurant, but we need to understand intimately the stories of this establishment to then be able to understand the opportunity there. And at that point too, a lot of the time when we're thinking about taking on a new client, I want to have a deep dive with the founder or the maker or the person behind the brand to understand, is this something I would recommend for PR or influencers? Or should you go the advertising route? Because I think intrinsically, in order to do this well and in order to have great results, there needs to be a great story. And we can help craft that, but we need to understand what the basic, authentic, starting point is. And then we can grow and have, new partnerships or have media come in that are really excited about whatever that is. But it all starts with a story.
And it's probably really experiential too, right? I mean, whether you're in a, 3-star Michelin or you're in the burger joint down the street, everybody goes in there. Yes, they're looking for food, but they're also looking for a particular type of experience, right? So much of what you must publicize isn't on the menu. How do you find those stories?
So true. I mean, even like the burger joint, right? Where, maybe there's an amazing farm that they partner with and have partnered with for 10 years where they source the beef, or they work with a local baker that they, went to high school with and they help start the business. Like there's so many intricate stories that you don't know until you start asking and until you start getting to know the people behind it. And I think then it's from there, when we understand the story, that's where we can have a really honest conversation with the potential client of, hey, here are the levers we would pull and here's what we think would make sense for you. Because influencers isn't always a great option for somebody, especially when budget is tight and they need to have, they have specific goals and they don't have the budget to support influencers or the bandwidth internally to be able to actually create a special experience for somebody coming in. And those are all things that we need to understand before we can provide a clear recommendation of, here are the things you should do. And these are things we think would move the needle for your brand.
I've got to imagine too, knowing the few restaurant clients that I have worked with, wonderful people, but they all, to my ears, have a really defined idea of what they want to be or what the way they want to be perceived. Have you ever had to work with a client and talk them out of the way they want to do it because that way isn't going to work as well as the way that you're going to suggest, and being the professional coming in, analyzing their business from the outside, saying, hey, if you take that story and turn it a little bit differently, this is going to be better for you?
Yeah, we've definitely had to have some difficult conversations. And I think a lot of it too is it's a timeline, and I'm readjusting somebody's expectations where, we've had a restaurant client come to us and say, I want to get a James Beard Award. And we can have honest conversations and say, you guys are amazing, but these are the things that need to happen in order for you to get there. One, is that feasible? Things that are out of our control, like, there's certain parts of the menu or sourcing or, the staffing, like those types of pieces that need to be in place for us to even consider that. And then there's the long-term play of those types of really lofty goals. It's a long-term play. I need to get the chef to be able to go and do a dinner with the right people that are connected with the awards or media that have a say or can, whisper in somebody's ear, they heard about this cool new restaurant. So for them, it's more of saying, that can be a long-term goal, but that's going to be a year, 2 years away. So let's also think about what are the things that need to happen 3 months, 9 months, a year from now to get you to that place, both what we're going to be doing, but also we can be an outside voice, an outside perspective and tell you what you need to change internally in order to get there, if that is in fact your goal. And some people say, awesome, let's do it. And other people might say, I don't think that's possible. And we're saying, okay, let's regroup. Let's talk about what your goals are then.
Well, it sounds to my ears like the old "we want to be in the New York Times" thing,
Love that
right?
one. We get that often. Yep.
And you have that conversation about, okay, here's what you need to do to get to the New York Times. Here's how you build up to that. Yes, you may stumble on this amazing story that's going to be just right for the particular reporter and the particular outlet and whatever, and you kind of strike gold in that way. But what I'm hearing you describe is the same thing as the way I describe it to my clients, is you got to kind of walk up to that. You kind of, you should be getting the coverage in the places you're supposed to be getting the coverage that, like you said, is going to move your needle, and you're working towards that goal.
Yes, absolutely. And it isn't just on the PR team to get you there, right? Like if you're going to be having those type of lofty goals, whether it's New York Times, Jade Beard, or whatever it might be, it's, everyone that's involved needs to be part of that goal and briefed in, and there needs to be clear steps and milestones to get there.
Similar to restaurant has got to be the wine industry as well. And let's talk a little bit, building on what you talked about with restaurant and finding brand and, differentiating, etc. How do you do that with wine? I mean, you walk into the average wine store, there's 1,000 bottles of wine. I mean, other than red versus white versus I like this or that, how do you differentiate a wine?
Yeah, so it really depends on the audience. That's where we always start, of who is your target audience, because exactly what you just said, I feel like there's a large portion of, both nationally and internationally, that they say, I like Pinot Grigio and that's what I like. And I will only try Pinot Grigio. There's a lack of understanding, I think, from the average consumer for wines and wine tastings and what they like or don't like, or maybe they had a really sweet Riesling once that was like their grandma's Riesling. They're like, I hate Riesling. Well, maybe you haven't had a dry Riesling from the Mosel Valley, but they won't try it because it's Riesling, right? So one, you have to understand who your target audience is. And then you have to start thinking, kind of going back and doing a work back from there of, okay, these are the challenges that we're going to have based on, the challenges that exist in the wine world. And also, how can we break through some of that noise? There are so many different wines, so many amazing producers, so many mass-produced crap wines too, where how do you break through that? So for us, a lot of it happens. And one of the challenges too is that you have people are predominantly buying something in person. We're not at the place like where the fashion industry, where people are so used to purchasing things online. D2C for beverage is still very, very behind fashion or tech. And so we can create this digital ecosystem and this digital brand, and we need to be able to also connect it when they're purchasing. So I think for us, it's something that we always try to have our brands and our campaigns be something that breaks through that noise, that leaves a lasting impression, and also reminds people of not only the brand, but also what they're going to experience when they open the bottle. Because I think it's intrinsically different than, I saw a beautiful dress, I'd like to purchase that. I can see it on the model, I'm going to try it on. You can't digitally tell somebody what it tastes like. I mean, you can tell them, but they can't really experience it. Everyone's taste is a little bit different, right? So for us, we try to create these really remarkable campaigns that break through that noise and create some lasting brand recognition. So when they're walking through the aisle of the grocery store and they see that brand, like, oh, I remember that brand. They did something with so-and-so, or I saw them in the New York Times, or I saw them here, that type of thing.
Is there, winding up this conversation, which has been terrific, is there a go-to tactic that you have to either get the ball rolling or to get someone over the goal line? Or is there something fun that you love to do with the client that just produces that chef's kiss kind of result?
Yeah, I think, and you mentioned this earlier in our conversation, but when we can fuse PR with also working with influencers or a spokesperson and social, when we have those three, I think that that's when we really create some magic. And that's where I feel like we really start moving the needle in a big way. Because, like, for example, we work with, this isn't a wine brand, but we worked with with Colavita. They're a premium Italian pantry staples. You've probably seen like their extra virgin olive oil in the grocery aisle. We worked with them for this campaign. We partnered with Jess King, who's a Peloton instructor. And this was like circa 2021, where Peloton was at the all-time high. And Colavita's background had this really authentic partnership and sponsorship for years with pro cycling teams, with cycling nonprofits. And with 2021, everyone was cooking at home. They were working out at home. Nobody was like doing their normal thing. So we partnered with Jess to create some really interesting recipes where we could then take those recipes, pitch them out to PR contacts. So we landed her recipe in Shape and in Eating Well and a couple other things. And then we could also repurpose that on social, and we could put money behind it and do an ad campaign to try to drive traffic to the website. So it was this multifaceted campaign that used, essentially a couple pieces of content, a couple recipes, but we were able to touch multiple audiences and also multiple different placements for it as well.
That is super smart. And I'm a big fan of that, multi-use, single piece of content, multi-use application philosophy, because it works, right? And you've seen it up close and personal. It works. That's great. Jess King, by the way, also my go-to Peloton instructor. I love her. I just love her positivity. And it's a lot of fun. I'm a little jealous you got to work with her. That's pretty cool.
She was great.
Well, Amanda, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge here. We are going to pivot now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio, ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two. You're coming to us live from Boston today, so let's get a little Boston flavor in here. And Amanda, rapid fire question number one for you. What is your favorite news source?
Oh, I think my favorite is Cherry Bomb Magazine for food and beverage, especially for women. But I also love the Wall Street Journal for just like go-to news.
Got to get it. Okay. Rapid fire question number two. What's your favorite social media platform?
Instagram. My millennial is showing Instagram.
Nah, that works. That works for me. All right. Quick thumbs up, thumbs down. Threads. Thumbs down. Yeah. It didn't catch. It had like that moment in the sun and it was just gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
All right. I'm with you. Rapid fire question number three. Coffee or alcohol?
Wine.
Ah! All right. Now, like I said, Boston, if you drink coffee, Dunkin' or Starbucks?
See, I'm a West Coast girl. I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon, so my West Coast is showing Starbucks.
Okay, there you go. All right, I'm down. Rapid fire question number four. What's your favorite on the run food?
If I'm out, Sweet Green is like my go-to, but I also have started making these really amazing like energy balls from dates and peanut butter and flaxseed. They're fantastic. So I always pack those when I'm traveling.
Nice little homemade action. I love that. And rapid fire question number five. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
I think I want to start my own winery or own beverage brand. I'm not sure what that would be, but that's a pie in the sky dream.
Well, I think you've got the background for it for sure. That sounds good.
True.
Well, Amanda, this has been a great conversation. Again, thank you so much. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Absolutely. So you can follow along at Curate Company on Instagram or visit us at curateandco.com.
Wonderful. We'll look you up. Amanda, thank you again so much. And thanks everyone for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Apple. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.